Excellent, thank you, thank you. So I have the honor, really, of going near the end and being able to talk about what I see as the through line through Chris's work. And we've heard so many wonderful things today, and I think, to me, what the very clear through line is this coupling, the coupled treatment of the energy and water cycles. And there have been so many wonderful talks today that I'm happy I can follow on follow on the shoulders of those before me. But first, I have to talk about Krista before I talk about Chris's through line here, because Krista and I have been dear friends ever since I first arrived at GFDL. Krista, you were remarkable in helping teach me the ways of GFDL, the ways of the model, of the place, how to run the model, the tools to analyze the model, and just how to navigate many of the different aspects of GFDL. It was also funny that we were two of a very small number of women at the lab at the time when I first arrived, and we were both working for Chris, so it was Kirsten, Krista, which confused people enormously, and I guess it confused them enough, and we looked enough alike that people confused us for each other all the time. So I enjoyed being mistaken for you on many occasions, and in fact, there was one holiday party when I had registered, but you were not able to be there. But when I arrived, there was a name tag for you, but not for me. So I made the most of it and enjoyed confusing people even more. Many people were utterly dumbfounded when I made this slight alteration to your name tag and wore it all night long. So I just want to say I'm honored to be confused for you and mistaken for you. So thank you for all of your contributions to my time at GFDL, but also obviously to the work that you and Chris have done together. So that through line is about the coupled treatment of energy and water. And Chris, earlier you said that you spent a lot of time working on the title for this 2020 paper, and I think I see it right there. It's all about the energetics of evaporation, right? You're such a good writer, and you're so good at distilling the essence of the key messages of your paper into your titles that I think we can see this through line through these titles. You know, there it was the energetics of evaporation, but it was all of these other ones. They include both something about the water and something about energy. You know, potential evapotranspiration is all about that energetic demand for moisture. And of course, all of your model development papers are not just hydrology models. They're always land, water, and energy, right? So these are some of the titles from some of your most recent papers, but I think we could do this with all of your titles, and we can even go back to 1982, as Randy showed earlier. This one's moisture and heat transport, right? But it's true of a bunch of others as well. And again, your LAD model development paper was, again, land, water, and energy balances. So that through line is there through all of your work, and of course it's entirely, you know, consistent with what the main focus of GWEX is, right? GWEX is all about understanding the Earth's water and energy cycle, and so this core project of the World Climate Research Program, which is speaking to scientists all over the world, has of course been informed by your work all throughout the history of GWEX, and that was made particularly clear to me this summer when I was at a GWEX meeting, and separately, two people involved with GWEX started various email trails where they attached your 2008 Stationarity is Dead paper. Jan Polscher, who's one of the current co-chairs of the GWEX Scientific Steering Group, he said, this is, you know, Chris has been calling for a change of paradigm in hydrologic forecasting since 2008. You know, he saw it long ago. But then Peter van Ovelen, on a separate email trail, Peter is the longtime director of the International GWEX Program Office, and Peter included this paper as an inspiration for our next GWEX Open Science Conference, saying, hey, let's think about this paper and how forward-looking it was as we plan our next Open Science Conference. So I think you've inspired a lot of us, and we've heard from some of the people today, but unfortunately not everyone you've inspired could speak today. So Krista Peters-Ledard was another one who, when she replied to this symposium announcement, she wrote in her email, Chris's work has been an inspiration to me. And I think she speaks for many of us. And in fact, just recently, this paper came out in BAMS covering the first 30 years of GWEX. And Graham Stevens, who's another who was the co-chair of the GWEX SSG for many years, he spearheaded this paper, and this schematic appeared in a sidebar about the evolution of our land model toolkit. And I look at this paper, or I look at this figure rather, and I see your work throughout it all. And of course, I mean, I put the figure together, so that might be an indication of how much I see your work as just central to the evolution of land modeling capabilities. So if we think about that first step from, you know, Suki's the bucket model of 1969 to that first step forward where we had fluxes from both the canopy and the ground, and where we had some semblance of vertical transport in the soil. Well, I think some of your early work on your treatment of the unsaturated zone and on solving issues of non-conservation that had plagued some earlier attempts, those were critical to making that first leap. And then in the next step, I mean, I think Randy spoke about this 1992 paper, and I think it was really essential for the whole land modeling community to hear that, to recognize that the wrong temperatures were being used in the calculations of potential evapotranspiration, which of course had implications for the actual fluxes of ET. And Paul Diermeyer, so I just want to say I'm including a bunch of quotes from various GWEX related people, but I didn't solicit any of these comments. These were things that were either offered to me when I mentioned we were having a symposium for you, or just in general conversation. So this is what Paul said about this paper. It represented Chris's attention to detail and his willingness to say what needs to be said, regardless of how it would be taken. Chris would not back down when he knew he was right, and he always made sure first that he was right. I think that's a pretty amazing statement, and I think it speaks to your credibility and your integrity and your scientific rigor and your consistency in your application of that scientific rigor. Another person made all of those traits of yours clear to me when in 2005 I was giving a poster at AGU that both of us were involved in, and it had your name on it. And unfortunately, I don't remember. I don't know who this was, but I know it was a USGS colleague of yours. And he came and said, "I came to your poster because of that name. I trust anything that Chris Milley puts his name on." And that has stuck with me because I think, again, that really speaks to your credibility in the whole scientific community. So moving forward with this timeline here, this 1994 paper that was mentioned earlier today, I agree that this is just a beautiful way of applying your energy and water lens to this global problem of the long-term water balance, and recognizing that we can think of it as just a supply and demand issue. I mean, it's really beautiful in its simplicity, that approach. And this idea of your philosophy of including model complexity only as needed, that has had a fundamental impact on many land modelers. This is something that, again, unsolicited, Zubin Zhang mentioned in an email to me, and Zubin is also one of the co-chairs of GWEX right now. So again, just your impact on the community in GWEX and beyond is just really remarkable. Moving a little bit farther forward in time, this paper, 1997 paper, where you illustrated the need to include plants in models. I think that this is where you started to let go of some of that, the really simple version, and recognize that, well, you know, changes in plant rooting characteristics can have this same impact on continental summer dryness as changing atmospheric greenhouse gases. So you illustrated the need to include the plants, but you also gave some guidance on well, how should we do that? You know, and you recognize the need to incorporate observations, theory, and models. And again, that's always an underpinning, and many people have mentioned it in the earlier talks today, just that scientific rigor and consistency, and always using observations to confront the models and make sure they're doing what they should be doing. And again, it's a beautiful, beautifully evident throughout all of your work. But Krista Peters-Ladar did tell me that she had a funny conversation with you about how you were going over to the dark side when you started adding more complexity into land surface models. But I would venture to say that you willing to step in that direction has enabled our land model toolkit to blossom in the way that Elena and Nate and Eugene and Reed have all talked about at length here. And I think we're all incredibly grateful to you for that. And I feel like we all are standing on your shoulders and standing on the shoulders of a giant. So with my last slide, I just want to share one more quote that was shared to me by Andy Pittman, again, unsolicited. And this was in 2007 when I first met Andy, and I went down to UNSW, University of New South Wales, and worked with him for a little while. And I had just published a paper that had your name on it. And when he spoke of you, he said, Chris's contributions to the field have not been incremental, they have been monumental. So I want to thank you, Chris, for a career of monumental contributions that we've all been able to benefit from. So thank you, thank you.
Wow. You know, as we draw toward the end of this love fest, you know, we all know that we need to exaggerate a little bit when we do these things, right? And you know, it occurs to me right now to mention that, you know, a lot of things that I did at GFDL were done earlier by some greats, Bob Dickinson with the bats and Piers Sellers with SIB, but we lost Piers from our field much too early. Piers was an astronaut around the same time that a former director of the USGS was an astronaut. And I'd much rather have had contact with Piers in recent years than say some other astronaut. But anyway, yeah, Kirsten, it's always been a delight to be around you, and just thank you. I'm running out of, you know, speechless words here.
No need to say more. No need to say more.